out. Here come former SportsCenter anchor Bob Stevens, esteemed basketball coach Rich Basirico, and Hall of Fame sports writer Curry Kirkpatrick. And someone's going under the bus.
Welcome in. Thanks for joining us under the bus. Again, Bob Stevens along with Curry Kirkpatrick and Rich Basirico. We are brought to you by Hudson's on the Docks, great seafood restaurant on Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. Go to hudsonsonthedocks.com and take a look at that menu, and then get down here to watch the tournament, the big tournament next week, because everybody's going to be watching it and everybody's going to be eating oysters and doing all that. Let's talk NCAA hoops. This is you guys' heaven. This is Christmas for you guys. Curry, you got somebody to throw under the bus right off the bat.
Well, speaking of the big tournament, it bothers me every year when these some negativists come out and blast college basketball and say it's only a 3-week season and nobody cares about this week particularly. Nobody cares about the conference tournaments, and everybody's waiting for the big tournament, the 3-week tournament, and that's all anybody cares about. Of course, they don't remember the great games that are played in this sport way back in November and Thanksgiving, where all the big teams get together and play each other in these tournaments. And also today we're talking on Thursday when these tournaments are going on, and there just been some great games. These teams play their hearts out in these tournaments, and it's stupid to think that they don't care. It's just, even, of course, John Calipari came out this week and said he's now the coach at Arkansas. He said he's never cared about the conference tournaments. And then he, of course, joked, and then he said, that's why I've won 4 of them at Kentucky. So
here we go.
Yeah, and
here
of course,
we go. And he gets beat today.
Well, his team played their asses off to nearly win the game and continue on in the tournament. But that's my point.
Are they in, you think?
I'm not sure, Rich. What do you think?
I don't think so. I really don't. They've had some bad losses. They lost to South Carolina, who came in last place in the SEC, because they beat them also. But I don't think so. But who knows?
Well, that might have been a big game for them today. I think they're going to still be watching on Sunday with their fingers crossed. But that's my point. Today being Thursday, the amazing games around the country. The Big East, Marquette played Xavier a 2-point game.
Yep.
89-87, and Xavier was probably playing for their NCAA tournament life. They may be out because of that. In the Southeastern Conference, Arkansas we talked about.
Right.
Texas A&M, Texas, 94-89 over Texas A&M in 2 overtimes. I watched the game, unbelievable. And Texas might have gotten in on that based on that win today.
Right.
That's how important these games are. The Big 12, BYU made 18 threes, 18 to upset Iowa State. Of course, Iowa State held out a couple of their important players because it was, it's the conference tournament. So there's an example, but the score was 96-92, Iowa State not playing with a couple of their best players. But, that's let's go back. I want to bring this up. Even before the tournament started, the Big Ten, the final week, Michigan State, the rivalry, okay? Michigan State had already clinched the season. Won the regular season by 3 games.
Right.
So they're playing Michigan. The game doesn't mean much, but it's the rivalry. So Michigan State is pulling away at the end of the game. And this is the first thing that's going under the bus. Michigan State's tradition of having the seniors kiss the logo in their last game, get down on their knees and kiss the Michigan State logo at the Breslin Center. So Sunday, a couple Michigan players hung out around the center court when they were doing this, and that angered a couple of the Michigan State players. And Trey Holloman, one of their starters, who's not a senior, he's a junior, he went over and started yapping at the Michigan players, and then he didn't punch one, but he pushed one, and then all hell broke loose in the players. It was hysterical. And Izzo just kind of stood there bewildered at what was happening. But one reporter said that he heard Izzo say to Holloman, "Go kiss that frickin' S," which is, and it's not even an S anymore. I mean, Izzo doesn't even know what the logo is anymore. It's a Spartan thing. It's a
They got
Michigan State
Sparty.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so afterward, the Michigan coach, Dusty May, said this thing has been going on for 30 years. They've been kissing the logo. Okay. Dusty May said he was unfamiliar with he didn't realize what the tradition was. And he said, wait a minute. He said, if our guys are standing at midcourt while there's a free throw going on, they're supposed to not stand. Is that a tradition? I'm not fond of that one, if that's a tradition. And so I don't think Izzo was very happy after the game at anybody. He said nobody's going to change our traditions, like as if Dusty May in Michigan, we're going to change the tradition.
Well,
But
they never
talked
about it. Dusty May didn't even know anything about it. So surely they didn't talk about it before the game. Like, hey guys, towards the end of the game, let's huddle around the center circle so they can't kiss. He didn't even know about the tradition.
Well, that's what he said. But the Big Ten did
for Dusty
the Big
May.
Ten. Go ahead. What are the two words?
Play better.
Well, the Big Ten network, Dusty May actually said they did hand us our bottoms, but the Big Ten network just finished doing a show all about the tradition. So for them to say they didn't know about it is kind of, shaky to me. It's, whatever.
Hey, do you guys believe in all of this last four in and first four out and all this hocus pocus that Joe Lunardi comes up with every year? I know Joe was up there when he was just getting started. And it's interesting the names that you brought up, Curry, because North Carolina he has in the first four out. Texas he had in the first four out. Boise State he had in the first four out. They all won.
Right.
And then three of the teams that were in the last four in, Indiana lost. Xavier, as you mentioned, lost. Ohio State lost yesterday. So now.
And Carolina won. So they're in now in Joe's thing. They're in the first four in, or last four in. Yeah. And so
somebody thinks
what happens if they lose next?
Well, yeah.
Then they back out.
That's why, like Curry said, the tournament this week is huge. People who say it's not worth watching, it's huge. There's so many great things happening. How about St. Francis of Pennsylvania with a record of 10-17 and makes the NCAA playoffs? They were 10-17, probably the lowest ranked team that's ever made the NCAA playoffs. It's great story.
How's Delaware doing?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about St. Francis.
Delaware lost.
Delaware lost. Oh.
Delaware
won
was
4 games in 4 days, but they had to win 5 in 5 to get in. Oh.
Right. But they played a great game.
They played a good
against
game
UNC Wilmington. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. But getting back to St. Francis,
yes.
Rich, you're right. And whatever Ken Palm is, but they rate all the teams.
Yeah.
And they've ranked of 100 and 96 teams. St. Francis is 364 teams they ranked.
Right.
St. Francis 310.
Yeah.
They say that this is the worst team ever to make the NCAA. I didn't realize that 39 losing teams, 39 have played in the NCAA tournament with the losing record.
I didn't think it was that many.
I would have thought it was about 10.
That's what I would have guessed. Yeah.
So 39 and St. Francis, according to these two, is the actual worst ever.
And last year they were 8-22. Their coach played there. He played there. He's been there since 1991 or something like that. He played there.
He's stayed his whole life there, and he didn't even want to go there. Did you read that story? He didn't even want to go there because it was so small.
Right. Yeah. The town's less than 2,000 people, and the school is less than 2,500 people.
Yeah.
But you remember who played there? Kevin Porter played there.
Yeah.
And there was another really good player, Porter, and who's the other one?
Well, the coach's name is Rob Krimmel. No relation to Jimmy Kimmel. But the town is Loretto, Pennsylvania, and it's in the western. It's in the western, out of nowhere of the state. not near Pittsburgh or anything. Some coach once said it's 1 hour outside the middle of nowhere. He called Loretto, Pennsylvania. But I'll tell you, growing up in the 50s, following Niagara University and all the teams they played, St. Francis was a regular on their team. And they had one of the great players in NBA history came out of St. Francis. His name was Maurice Stokes. I don't know if you remember that name.
I remember,
but
absolutely.
He was a hero of mine in the 50s. Yeah. He played there in the 50s. He was one of the top draft choices of the NBA. He was a 3-time all NBA player. And then he was in a collision in a game the next year, and he hit his head. And it was really serious, and it went to his brain, and it destroyed his brain. And he was a paraplegic the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Yeah. He's one of the historical names in the NBA, Maurice Stokes from tiny St. Francis.
Yeah. Well, wasn't Jack Twyman? Didn't he take care of him?
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Jack Twyman was his. In fact, there's a partner award in the NBA. They give a partnership award, and it's named after Twyman and Stokes and Maurice Stokes. Cool. I remember him. I wonder, I read all these stories about Rob Krimmel, again, no relation to Jimmy Kimmel. And he, for this last game, the championship game, he wrote on his play card, whatever that is. What's a play card, Rich? I don't know what a play
card is.
Coaches,
I used to have a sheet that would have your, defenses and some of the offenses that you run.
He wrote on that before the championship game. Audience of one, thy will be done, surrender. What is he writing surrender on the play card for? I mean, I don't get it.
I don't know what it doesn't make sense.
It's under.
Don't surrender, that's for sure.
Unless he was going to write Dorothy on it during the game, like the Wizard of Oz, surrender Dorothy up in the plaza. You know what St. Francis's NIL budget is?
Yep, zero.
Yeah.
Zero. How about that? Think about that. There's no money.
Hey, I'm going to throw a name at you guys. The Cinderella of the tournament that starts next week. The other one, they're already in. The Cinderella, I've already got them picked. Drake.
A women's team?
No, men's team.
Drake.
No, Drake's good. Drake. You're right. Drake's very good.
They're doing it with Division II players.
Yeah, Drake's the team where Ben McCollum brought four of his players from Division II, and they're part of the heart of this team. And they've only lost a couple times, right?
Yeah. Curry, you and I have talked about this in the past. Nolan Richardson did that with his junior college team, took the whole team with him and made Tulsa better immediately. And I had asked you why anybody hadn't done it since. This is about as close as you get. A guy who Drake lost all of their players when their coach took a job a couple of years ago at West Virginia. And so he's at Northwest Missouri with this great Division II team. And they're leading. All their best players are Division II players. The couple that they filled in with the guys he brought are also D2s.
He's got a point guard named Sturtz who handles the ball the entire game. He has more minutes and more, handling the ball minutes than whoever figures that out than any player in history. And the guy, the coach gives him the ball, and he just handles the whole offense. Yeah. He scores himself about 24 a game. But yeah, Drake's a great story. There's another, you mentioned Delaware. I watched the game. It was Delaware, UNC Wilmington.
Yes.
And, I got to get my guy in here because the game was so fun because one of the announcers was Pete Gillen, the great, remember the former, who's from Brooklyn and has this great Brooklyn accent. And he's calling the game. He played.
Even with all the years he spent in Cincinnati and at Notre Dame and down in the SEC, wasn't he at Vandy?
Well, no, he coached at Providence and he coached at Virginia.
Okay,
and Xavier, right?
All those places that are not New York, and yet he's still.
They never got to Brooklyn.
Curry, do you think he's a good analyst? I was just taken back about some of the things he said. It was like, you got to be kidding me.
Well, yeah,
I
they're
mean,
so funny. They're so funny. He said at one point late in the game, he said, "So I got, I'm trying to get his accent here, but he would, and he always, when he goes to break, he's so great. He says, well, we have a great, we have a great game here in the nation's capital. Stay with us, like WIDDUS. Stay with us. He said,
well,
he's famous for, a few years ago, I don't know if he was doing a game or if he was just talking, but he was talking about Duke. And he came up with this line. He said, Duke is Duke. Duke is Duke. Duke is on TV more than Leave It to Beaver. leave it to Beaver. The funny thing is, he was a terrific coach. He beat Duke at Providence one year in the second round, and he went all the way to the Elite Eight with his Providence team, and they lost to Arizona in overtime. Arizona went on to win the tournament, but so he's had a great experience coaching, and now it's so funny, Rich, you said it because you can't understand what he's saying half the time.
No, I was like taken back. I'm trying to
Yeah.
listen to what he's saying. One thing the play-by-play guy said, so Pete, what do you think this last possession, what's going to happen? He said, well, if I can't remember the name of the school that was playing at the time, when they take the shot, the other team has to get the rebound. Like, what do you, what the other team has to get the rebound? Is that, or saying this team, what do you think they have to do to win this game? Well, they have to score baskets. Oh,
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
He came up with one the other night. He said the legs are going to be a factor down the stretch. The legs are going to be a factor.
Sounds like he's
really
at the
funny,
horse
but
track.
At the horse track.
All right, let's shift gears to the NBA. When we come back, we're going to talk about why everybody still thinks the Celtics are going to win the thing, even though they keep getting beat by two teams that are better than they are. We'll talk about that and throw some other people under the bus when we continue. All right, here, Under the Bus, brought to you by Hudson's on the Docks. We bring you back to Under the Bus. Bob Stevens along with Curry Kirkpatrick and Rich Basirico. A lot of people, NBA watchers, are watching the Celtics and they're watching the Lakers and they're dreaming of the TV dream final, Celtics, Lakers. And yet they both keep getting beat by Cleveland and Oklahoma City, who are, I think, head and shoulders above everybody else in the league. But nobody in the league wants to admit that, do they? I'm throwing the league under the bus.
Yeah, you should. I mean, Cleveland and Oklahoma City are definitely the best two teams. I mean, Boston will be there knocking on the door just because of, they have talent. They were there. They won it last year. But Bob, your Cleveland team is playing unbelievable. They have 15 games. They've won 15 games in a row.
Second 15-game winning streak of the season.
Yeah,
they've done that twice. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But nobody anybody knows about.
Here's the
Nobody
number
can mention anybody that plays for him.
Here's the number that you Laker and Celtic fans and Knick fans need to know. Only 3 of the last 25 finals have matched up the 2 number 1 seeds. So of all of finals, NBA finals this century, only 3 times has it been the 2 number 1s, East and West. Last time was 2016 when it was Golden State and Cleveland. So there.
I knew you'd come up with that figure. How many times number 1 seeds have played?
Because I think they are. I mean, I you know what's going to happen though? Both teams are going to lose a game early in their first series, and panic is going to set in. Oh my God, they had this great season, and they've blown it already. They're going to lose a game early. Might just be one, but
nobody cares about Oklahoma City because they're such a small market. But they've beaten the Celtics twice. The first time Chet Holmgren didn't even play, and the second time was the other night, and he was terrific. I mean, he's he was the original Wembanyama. I mean, he's a 7 foot, outside shooter. And, from Gonzaga, he left Gonzaga after 1 year. He's a terrific player, I think. I mean,
Okay. We need to learn these
And-
Oklahoma City guys too, because they have like 15 draft picks in the next 5 drafts. I mean, they a bunch of first rounders, second. They've got this. They may be the best organization in all of pro sports in what they have talent wise and what they're gonna have talent wise. So we may be wanting to learn a little more about them.
and SGA.
Yes.
Gilgeous Alexander, he just took over the Celtics game in the fourth quarter again, like he's been doing all season. Everybody thinks he's going to be the MVP of the league. I think he's kind of separated himself from Jokic
Indeed.
now. I mean, he's so smooth and he's so cool. Unfortunately, he's not a personality, so. He's sort of, like the Ant-Man. But speaking of which, Minnesota has beaten Denver 3 times the other night. So, don't count them out. I want to ask Rich. I mean, the biggest story the last few days, though, is the New York Knicks controversy.
Right.
Rich, tell me about that. What's up with your boy Tibbs and?
Tibbs, kind of threw his player under the bus because they supposedly he went to Tibbs and said, "Hey, you need to play more guys. We're getting tired," which is so true because I watched their box scores and he plays 8 players. What's the point of having a roster of 15 players if you're not going to play at least not? Usually rotation in the NBA is like 9 players, maybe 10. He plays 7 or 8, and they play a lot of minutes. So Bridges went to him and said, maybe we should play some of these other guys. Why do you bring people in, put them on your roster, draft rookies, and never play them? Don't even play them. It doesn't make sense. If they're not good enough to play in the NBA, don't have them on your team. Don't have them sit there.
Bridges didn't go into detail with that with Thibodeau, but he basically said, we want to play less minutes.
Right.
Of course, he hit the game winning shot in overtime, so they played a lot of minutes the other night. But of course, Thibodeau now is denying the conversation ever took place. So that's the problem. We got 2 guys, that one of them's lying. I mean, they're calling each other liars. What are the tabloids going to do with this, Rich?
I don't know. New York Post will be all over that. You're throwing your player under the bus. I mean, you're throwing him under the bus. And what's wrong with him? What's wrong with him saying that to his coach? I mean, obviously he's going to make the final decision. But what's wrong with him going there and saying, "Hey, coach, we're playing too many minutes."
And he's right.
He's right. He's exactly right. He's exactly. So we'll see what happens.
You guys want a good soap opera of a basketball team? How about the LA Waves? It's an NBA team in Netflix. Running Point is the name of the show. It's the name of the series. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
I follow it religiously.
It's very good.
Especially because it's got my girl Kate Hudson on it. That's why I watch it. It's basically the story of what's her name,
Jeannie Buss.
Jeannie Buss, and she's running the team. It's funny. It's really funny, don't you think?
It is good. Yeah,
I love it.
Good.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, 3 thumbs up if any of the great viewers they need critics. We give it 3 thumbs up right here. All
there
of
you
us
go.
are going right after it. Speaking of NBA, we lost one of a name that Curry. I'm curious to know if you knew him from his college days. Junior Bridgman passed away this week, just 71 years old. Actually, one of the 5 richest ex-athletes in the world. I mean, he's up there with Tiger and Arnold Palmer, and he made gazillions of dollars not playing basketball, but owning Wendy's franchises and things like that. He passed away. Did you know him at Louisville?
Yeah.
Curry?
Yeah, at Louisville, I covered him as a college player at Louisville. He played with Denny Crum. He was on some of the great teams at Louisville. And I remember as being really a cool guy. He was very quiet, undemonstrative, but a really good player and just a really cool guy. I would never predicted he'd made $1 billion. in his future. But boy, what a career! He started out buying fast food restaurants, right? And he ended up owning like 80 of them or something.
Yeah,
Wow.
huge. And curiously, I read a story today where Shaq said that's the guy he called when he was about done playing. Says, what do I do? And but he knew to call Junior Bridgman because Bridgman had done so much outside the game. And look what Shaq has now become one of those 5 richest ex-athletes. You see him everywhere, selling everything, and with his personality, and he gives all the credit to Junior Bridgman. We also Oliver Miller. You remember Curry, Arkansas Razorbacks, big man.
Oh yeah,
went to the NBA. He passed away at the age of 54 this week.
I didn't realize he died as well. Oh, yeah. I didn't know Miller. What did they call Miller? He had a great nickname. I can't remember now.
I just thought they called him the Big O, even though because his name was Oliver. I can't remember. He might have had a different nickname. But he was integral in those Arkansas teams. And of course, you and I lost a friend and certainly a legend in the sports writing business just today. John Feinstein, at just the age of 69, wrote a column yesterday on Tom Izzo.
Yeah. This was a shock. To the journalistic community, the basketball community, and all sports, because John covered and wrote all kinds of books about every kind of sports. And I'll tell you one story. John was not a close friend, but a kind of friend of mine. We were since I was
a rival. He was at Duke. You were UNC. Did you guys ever sit together at a in a press box?
I think we were put together a couple times at basketball games, and we talked. But he really wasn't that nice to me, and I really wasn't that nice. And because of the Duke Carolina thing, because he was such a honky for Duke and the Rat, so I couldn't really agree with him on that kind of thing. But of course, John got his great boost in his career by writing the book on Bobby Knight called A Season on the Brink. And he told me this story. I guess everyone knows it by now. But when he was approaching Knight to do this book, and he told Knight he wanted to spend the whole season with him. He wanted to be in practices, in locker rooms at games and the sidelines, see Knight after practices, see him at his house, and just spend the whole season inside the team. And Knight really wasn't sure he wanted to do this. He really didn't want to do it, I don't think. But so he knew Feinstein was a Duke guy. So Knight called Krzyzewski, his boy Mike Krzyzewski, who had been his assistant at Army and who Knight had gotten a job at Duke. And he asked Krzyzewski about this guy Feinstein that wants to do this book on me. And Krzyzewski apparently said, "Oh, John's a fine reporter, good journalist. He'll be fair. He'll treat you right. He'll do good by you. You should go ahead and do it." So apparently that was the key note that convinced Knight to do this book with Feinstein. Of course, then the book comes out, and Feinstein quotes Knight just swearing all the time and berating his players and being terrible with his players. And Knight goes crazy after the book comes out, and he goes public. Any camera, any microphone he can find, he starts killing this book and Feinstein, saying he's a jerk and he's a bad guy and he lied to me, and he told me he wouldn't use my language. He told me that he'd keep my language, on the side. Of course, I don't believe that for a second. Of course, Feinstein denies that. He said, I would never say that to Bob Knight, that I was going to, keep his language off the record. But that's what Knight said. And he did it, and the book just exploded in sales because of that. I think to this day, if Knight hadn't come out and said stuff like that, if he'd just kept his mouth shut, the book just would have sold a lot in Indiana. It wouldn't have been a national hit, just a bestseller off the blocks. But after this happened, Feinstein, says that Knight Knight didn't talk to him for 8 years. And I know Knight didn't talk, and because of what Krzyzewski told him, Knight was furious at Krzyzewski. He called him Mike. He called Mike and said, "What did you sick this guy on me? He said he's a good guy and he kills me. He kills me with this book. What are you doing?" And he didn't speak the story. He didn't, and I know this for a fact. He didn't speak to Krzyzewski for about 8 or 10 years.
Wow.
Because he was so furious at Season on the Brink that he told him Feinstein was a good guy to go ahead and do this. I know this for a fact that because they came together, Krzyzewski and Knight only came together the year that Krzyzewski was honored in the Hall of Fame in Massachusetts. He called, when you're chosen for the Hall of Fame, you have to have a presenter. Mm-hmm. And Krzyzewski called Bob Knight. First time he talked to him in like 10 years. Called Bob Knight to ask him if he would be his presenter. And Knight, hemmed and hawed and said, okay, he would do it, which he did. And I know this because that's the year I got into the Hall of Fame with their writers award. And in my little speech, I mentioned as a joke, I said something funny about Krzyzewski and Knight. And everybody in the audience laughed, except I looked down at Krzyzewski. Krzyzewski and Knight were sitting together in the first row. And I looked at them right away, and they were daggers. They were throwing daggers at me.
They gave you the stink eye. They gave you the stink eye.
Yeah, they were furious. But yeah, I have a fun
story with John Feinstein. Can I tell
it?
Sure.
So I've read a couple of his books, and the one I was reading at the time was called The Legends Club, which was about Krzyzewski, Dean Smith, and Valvano. Excellent book. And I was 2/3 the way through it. And Peter Roby, a friend of mine, who at the time was the athletic director at Northeastern, and their school was playing in Charleston in their conference tournament. So he invited me to come up and spend a night with him and watch, go to the game and so forth. So I figured, what, I got a 2-hour drive. I'm going to listen, on tape, The Legends Club. I had it. Figure I've read 2/3 of it. I'll listen to the rest of the way up there and I'll probably finish the book. So I did. So on my way up there, I'm driving 2 hours, listened to The Legends Club on tape, finished it, went to the hotel, saw Peter. We go to the game, and he has really good seats in the first row. So we sit down, and all of a sudden this man walks up and starts talking to Peter Roby and talks about the NCAA committee and all this, that, because Peter was on that committee. And then he introduces me to him, and it's John Feinstein. So I just finished listening to his book. I've read his book, but finished it by listening on tape. And I'm not in Charleston 15 minutes, 30 minutes max, and then I get to meet John Feinstein. It was terrific. It was just unbelievable. So we talked about 3 or 4 minutes, mentioned Hilton Head. Curry, I think he mentioned your name because I mentioned he goes, "Where do you live?" I said, "On Hilton Head." He goes, and he mentioned Curry Kirkpatrick. Doesn't he live there? I said, "Absolutely, sure does."
He used to come here. He used to come here a lot on vacation.
He loved Hilton Head. He said he loved Hilton Head.
Yeah, he'd come here a lot. Yeah.
He sat in this very chair to do his CBS commentaries when he would come down on vacation. His in-laws had a condo here, and he would come down for about a week every year before basketball season started. And,
oh, nice.
And would do that. He warned me. He said that Kirkpatrick's a bad guy. You might not want to get to know him. So I actually knew John before I knew you, Curry, and I never figured out why Feinstein had this thing for you until I met you, and now I understand. Now I get it. It makes perfect sense. That there's Carolina blue and there's Duke blue, and they don't mix. That's for sure. Great stories, and we are indeed going to miss the great John Feinstein. All right, we got to come back. We still got to talk.
Speaking of Duke, Carolina, can I bring up another under the bus who's going under really fast and really strong, and that's the mother from hell, Mama Flag. Now everybody knows about what she did, I guess, or maybe kind of explain it. After Cooper Flagg was having a great game last weekend against Carolina, he had a big dunk toward the end of the game, and the cameras went toward her and her husband, father flag. And they had their hands on their head going like this. And she was shouting out, he fucking dunked on his fucking head. And she was screaming it out. This is his mother. It's Cooper Flag's mother. And apparently everybody heard it. She was upset. It went out over, it went out, what do they call it? Over the internet and went viral. And so the next day she had to, or wanted to, issue a quote apology for screaming out those things. And she claimed she did it because her and her husband got screamed at coming into the Dean Dome by all the Carolina fans. Well, does this woman not know that there's a rivalry between Duke and Carolina, and the Duke fans scream at Carolina fans, and Carolina fans scream at Duke fans at Durham? I mean, the Duke kids get about as nasty as anybody. But so she called she said, I just wanted to do a fuck you, excuse my French, to the Carolina fans. They're all assholes or something. She went online and said this. So, it's just, look, I want to tell you something. I hate Duke. Okay. I was brought up to hate Duke. When you go to Carolina, you're brought up to hate Duke, but this kid Flag, I can't hate this guy. He is first of all, he's so good and he seems so nice. He never says anything controversial. He's on the court. He treats, he's a tremendous sportsman on the court, it seems. He never does anything wrong. And then he has this mother who goes online screaming out epithets to the Carolina fan. I mean, I thought poor Cooper. I can't, I now have reason to hate him, of course, but a friend of mine, and they're from Maine. Of course, nobody in basketball history ever came from Maine. And the Flag family, lives in Maine. And he went when he was a junior and senior. He, of course, went to one of those Florida basketball high schools.
Mount Vernon.
Yeah. But he grew up in Maine and the whole deal. But a friend of mine from Chapel Hill had the best line about this. She said, "I didn't know they had trailer trash in Maine."
And I tell you what, though, the final word on this, Cooper is going to get the final word on this because he's going to come back next year,
Well, number one, I don't think that's right, and number two, I think the final word is already written, and it's karma. Because look who's not going to be in the third Carolina Duke game tomorrow night, and look whose mother Flag is not going to be able to watch. It looks like Cooper Flag, because he won't play probably, and she's not going to be able to see him play against the Tar Heels. Now, is that karma or what?
It is indeed, Curry. It is indeed.
Bad ankles will do that for you.
There you go. We got to come back and talk quickly about the NFL and baseball. We've gone almost 40 minutes and haven't even talked about either sport yet. They're the two big ones, supposedly. When we come back,
played yet, first of all.
Well, there you go. When we come back, NFL free agency and Major League Baseball, and we're going to throw the Yankees under the bus again. When we come back on Under the Bus. Welcome back to Under the Bus. Bob Stevens along with Curry Kirkpatrick and Rich Basirico. We probably don't have to spend too much time on NFL free agency because it's still going on and it's probably changing even as we speak and talk about here. I thought it was it's almost like the portal these days. I thought it was kind of interesting that my Browns decided to spend $40 million a year on a defensive end.
Who doesn't even want to be there? Who doesn't
really want to be there? Yeah. What of course they need. They're already spending more than that on a quarterback that'll never play for them.
But Bob, what was it about? The owner wouldn't speak with him.
Yeah. What was that?
Right? The owner said, I don't want to speak to you. What was that about?
The owner decided to be a tough guy, and I think they're beginning to wonder whether this owner is almost as bad as Art Modell was. They're having trouble. It's not a good time to be a Cleveland Browns fan. 10 players now in the NFL make 30 million or more a year that aren't quarterbacks. That's unbelievable.
Well,
So
let's
who's going to be your
name,
quarterback? Who's going to be the quarterback
let's
for the
name,
Browns and the Giants?
let's
can't
use his
name him.
name. Yeah. Let's use the 40 million guy's name. His name is Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett.
He's the guy we're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, so when the owner wouldn't talk to him, does that mean he had to talk to the GM, right? He has to go down the line, and the GM's the guy he's talking to. And apparently they talked long enough to offer him this, what,
$40 million.
40 million a year and 128 million guaranteed. And,
Yeah.
but, he's been mouthing off since the Super Bowl, Myles Garrett, about he wanted to move. He didn't want to be in Cleveland. He wanted to play for a contender. He wanted to win Super Bowls. His famous line, he said, I didn't want to just go from Cleveland to Canton, without doing anything. Well, which he's going to do. But, speaking of Bob, this is going to hurt you, but, he wants to move. He wants to move from Cleveland. He's the best thing in Cleveland since the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a thing which also, people want to move. So forever wanted that to move.
Good stuff there.
But how about he said, I mean, when he signed, and then, as I said, he's been mouthing off about he's never going to play there, never going to play there. And of course, money talked, I guess. I guess he doesn't think, and he said, well, I guess the Browns aren't going to be that bad. Well, they are. I mean, they are that bad. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, maybe they're going to figure out a way to rally. They're not going to, in the quarterback shuffle, they ended up with Kenny Pickett. That's who the Browns ended up with all these quarterbacks moving around. The Seahawks lose Geno Smith to the Raiders, but they get Sam Darnold. And then the Jets get Justin Fields. What do you think, Rich? The New Yorkers going to love that?
I do. I think they will. I really do. I think Justin Fields can bring a lot to the table because he can run, as you know, not the greatest passer around, but he can create. And for what they have, I mean, what are the options when you think about it? Look at the Giants in Cleveland right now. What are their options? You got Rodgers is out there. Rodgers is playing hardball. I mean, he's 41 years old and had come off a terrible season. I don't know why he's playing hardball, but Cleveland's going to pick him up. I think Minnesota's going to get him. I really do. I think Minnesota will. Because that's the best. He wants to win. Obviously, he doesn't want to play his last year in the NFL on a terrible team. Minnesota gives him the best chance to be successful. Not Cleveland, not New York.
Well, he's supposedly talking to Pittsburgh, Rich. He supposedly
that's true. That's right. You're right.
Remember?
You're right.
But who? But first of all, Justin Fields got benched in Pittsburgh.
Well, that's because of Russell Wilson. They promised Russell Wilson.
Everybody gets a second chance. This is this guy's third chance. Okay, this is Justin Fields' third chance. Okay, I know.
He will have his.
I'm going to throw under the bus the relevance of these quarterbacks, where they're going to be, and the relevance of their teams. Well, let's go through this very quickly. Geno Smith to Vegas. What, are you kidding me? I mean, Geno Smith. You look up in the dictionary. Journeyman, there's a picture of Geno Smith. Geno Smith is best known for his best line. Remember, he says, they wrote me off, but I ain't right back, though. That was his line. I wrote it down. They wrote me off, but I ain't right back. I mean, his tenses need rewinding here. Not to mention, he says "though" at the end. What does he mean? That's the thing. That's the thing Geno Smith is most known for. He goes to Vegas. They're not going to go anywhere. Okay, and they get Sam Darnold. Right. And Seattle's banking that they're getting the Slammin' Sammy of 16 games, not the sad Sam of the last 2 games.
It's not going to happen.
I know.
Think about what Sam Darnold had in Minnesota. He had probably the best wide receiver, Jefferson, in the NFL, if not the best, in the top 3.
Yeah.
He had a good running back in Aaron Jones. I mean, he had a great offensive line. Just wait to see what happens when he's in Seattle. It'll be a different ball game.
Well, do you think Aaron Rodgers again is holding up the whole system because where he's going to go? But Rich, you point out a interesting. I hadn't heard Minnesota, but if that's one of, all I've heard is Pittsburgh and the Giants for Aaron Rodgers, but Minnesota, you're right. If he went there, he'd get a much better team than first of all, Pittsburgh.
And then he will have done the complete Brett Favre trail.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Green Bay to the Jets to Minnesota.
Right.
How about that?
That's right.
That would be interesting. Russell Wilson apparently went to Cleveland to visit and left without a contract. He's supposedly going to see the Giants next.
I know.
So
I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen. I don't want the Giants to trade up. They're talking about the Giants trading up to the first pick. They talk about these quarterbacks not being that good, and now they're going to pick. They're talking about moving up to the first pick and give up draft choices. You need more than a quarterback, and these guys aren't the best quarterbacks. Sanders, they're talking about not even being a top 10 pick. I don't get it.
If Ciara, his wife, comes with Russell Wilson to the Giants, and they try to wine and dine him, I think Ciara would be more impressed there than anything that the Cleveland can do, should show him. I mean,
she could get inducted into the Rock Hall.
There you go.
That's right.
If they inducted her if they promised that they get her in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Take him. Please take Russell Wilson. Take him.
That's right.
Please.
That's right.
All right. One last thing. We got to throw the Yankees under the bus.
The Giants have to get somebody. They can't. They can't start the season with Sammy Salami at quarterback, right? They can't start the year with him.
No, they should draft a quarterback, but not the third overall pick. They're not worth the third overall pick.
But you hate all the college quarterbacks. You hate them all.
Well, no, the guy from Mississippi, I think you can get him later in the first round. Keep your third pick, get a really good defensive player, and then get Dart later in the first round. Trade. You got extra draft choices. Trade for them. But they're not worth the third overall pick. None of the quarterbacks coming out this year are worth the third overall pick.
Wasn't Y.A. Tittle from Mississippi? Was he from Mississippi?
No, I don't think so. I think it was LSU. Was he Kentucky? I thought it maybe
LSU.
Was
he was from one of those southern teams. I thought it was Mississippi or LSU. That might be what they're looking for the next Y.A. Tittle at Mississippi.
That's because what's his name? Manning came from Mississippi. That's the deal.
Yeah, that's right.
Charlie Connerly was probably from down there too, wasn't he?
There you go.
And of course, Phil Simms was from one of the Tennessee directional schools.
Right.
And so they love Southern quarterbacks.
I guess
Hostetler was from West Virginia.
That's right.
Forget it all back.
How about Fran Tarkenton? Where was Fran Tarkenton from? They had Fran Tarkenton.
Georgia.
Yeah.
Bulldog. See?
There you go.
There you go. It's all about New York and Southern quarterbacks with the Giants. Good stuff. Hey, what are you going to do to replace Garrett Cole, Rich?
That's a great question. I don't know what they think. Here's the interesting thing. Why do so many Yankees get hurt? I mean, so many guys have gotten hurt already this preseason. How hard is it to go out and practice and play? I mean, in all the years of playing baseball, how many times did you guys get hurt? Seriously,
Steinbrenner would have fired the whole training staff by now.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, they get like 5 guys. Gil, who's rookie of the year last year, he's out. Mayhew, who they count on playing third base, he's out. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It's unbelievable how many guys can get hurt like that. So they're talking about not trading for anybody right now. They get a rookie named Warren, who they think can maybe step in and take one of those spots, but they're hurting. They really are.
It's these tough spring training games. They should hold them all out.
And they don't even play.
Hold them all out of the
game. They don't even play in spring training games. They don't even play in them. Stanton's hurt. I mean, he's out. Stanton's out too, which I'm not crying over. But
you hate him too.
All right. Any last under the bus?
I do. I've got a mom from hell under the. Oh wait, I already.
Yeah, you've already done that.
I already.
You want to pull her out and throw her under again?
I've got an anniversary of a. It's going on the bus at the end of this story, but it was going to be the handshake of all time. 16 years ago this week, Connecticut and Syracuse played in the quarterfinals of the Big East tournament. They played a game that lasted 6 overtimes. I watched all of this game and all of the
did
overtime.
too.
Did you?
Yeah.
It ended at 1:20 in the morning, 1:20 a.m. in the morning. It was exhausting. And Jim Boeheim was on the ACC network the other day this week. They were asking a little bit about this game. Of course, he doesn't talk much about stuff like this, but he did say that the thing that he remembers about the game were there were these Wall Street guys sitting behind him, and they kept screaming as this game kept going on. They kept screaming at Boeheim, "Get this over with. We're going to miss the last train. We're going to miss our train." This thing kept going on. I mean, it lasted about 3 hours and 50 minutes or something. They went over some stats the other day. Kemba Walker played in the game. He was 4 for 18. He was a freshman. He played in the game. He was 4 for 18. Of course, 2 years later, he led Connecticut to the national championship. A guy named Johnny Flynn for Syracuse played in this game. Remember him? He led all scorers with 36. He played 68 minutes. and I said he led all scorers. I think that's maybe part of the reason he was drafted in the NBA draft ahead of Stephen Curry.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Probably because of that. But anyway, so this game I'm watching. And Jim Calhoun, Connecticut, Jim Boeheim, supposed to be great friends. Supposed to be these great friends. So I kept watching this, and for some reason, Syracuse ended up winning by 10. It was 127 to 117. So I'm waiting for the handshake. I'm thinking this is going to be a great handshake because these guys, I mean, this is what you coach for. I mean, these great moments, the players will remember it all their lives. The referees remember it. The fans remember. Anybody watching this, the coaches are going to remember it. They go, I'm waiting for the handshake. These are friends. They go up, and Boeheim kind of turns and sends his hand out. Calhoun brushes by him and just brushes his hand, smarches right by him, didn't say a word. And I'm sitting at home and I'm thinking, you know what? That's a shame. That's too bad. That's what coaching is. I mean, this is what you live for, a game like this. You live for moments like this. You embrace and you talk about it. You say, what have we been through? This is what we live for, this game.
Right.
And they can't enjoy it. They can't enjoy it. And Boeheim said the other day in the same thing. He said, games like that, he said, you have to win that game. You have to win it to remember it. You can't lose it. And he said, in all the relations that he and Calhoun have had since then, golf outings and meetings, Calhoun will not say a word about that game.
Wow.
He's never mentioned the game. He won't talk about it at all.
Wow.
And it's just unbelievable. It's too bad these guys.
Those are the games you want to talk about.
They're so wound up, they can't talk about it. They can't even talk about it. That's what I was going to ask you the other day, Rich. I said I got something to ask you on the podcast, and that is, do you remember a game like that at the end when did you have any kind of a emotional handshake with a guy that the game was so unbelievable?
Sure, absolutely. Typically, definitely. I mean, even if you didn't even know the guy that well, if you had it in a game like that, you pretty much hug. It was exhausting, but it was like a fun game to coach in. I mean, you're coaching. My second year of coaching, this is the JV level, but my second year of coaching, we went and had a 6 overtime game. Now those are only 6 overtimes, only 3 minutes. Each JV was only 3 minutes in the overtime because you played 6 minutes regular, per quarter. And the man I was coaching against was an old timer. He's been around coaching for a long time. I didn't know him that well, but I knew of him, and we embraced because it was just an exciting basketball game that the kids really got into. Even though it was at the JV level, the fans got into it because it went into 6 overtimes. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
I just thought of that when the two guys came together. I thought it was going to be this amazing embrace, and they didn't even speak. They just talked. I mean, coaching is so hard, but this is what these guys live for. This is what it's all. This is what it's all about. It reminds me of the great line. Nicholas playing in the British Open against Tom Watson, and they're just tooth and nail. They're just fighting it out, birdies every hole. And at one point on the 17th or something, Bob, right? Nicholas says to Watson, "This is what it's all about."
This is what
And they just,
Watson
came
agreed,
together and said, "This is what it's about." I mean,
That's so true. That's so true.
That game, that's what it was all about, Calhoun, and they couldn't enjoy it in Bayonne.
Yeah.
Which is
That's
sad.
too bad.
That's
Yeah,
sad.
it's really sad. Yeah.
Both of them go under the bus.
There
Yeah.
you
Great
go.
way to wrap up the show. Rich, Curry, thanks so much.
Thanks,
we thank you all
Bob.
for watching and listening. We'll come back. Next week we're going to start having to pick the NCAA tournament.
Right.
It'll be bracket time. Bracket mania right here.
Right.
Under the Bus, brought to you by Hudson's on the Docks. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Under the Bus is a production of the Loco Media Network and is filmed on the Hilton Head Island campus of the University of South Carolina, Beaufort. The executive producer is Justin Jarrett, with assistance from Trey Ramsey, Mahogany